My name is Jeffrey Perkins, and I'm Vice President of Communications and Marketing at Otis College of Art and Design, and I'm going to be your MC for today. So glad that you're here joining us, both here at the library and also online. We're streaming this event for those who could not attend in person. So the Otis Report is a labor of love for me, and I'm so grateful that this day has come, and I'm excited, very excited for the program that we have. First, I want to thank our sponsors, the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, 2nd District, the Stewart Foundation, the Endeavor Foundation, City National Bank, Gallagher, and Moss Adams. I can tell you firsthand that without these sponsors, we would not be able to produce this report. So thank you. If you could join me in thanking them. I also want to thank our media partners this morning. We have a whole bunch of folks who are helping us get the word out about the findings and about the event today. That's AIGA LA, Arts for LA, Arts Orange County, California Arts Council, Californians for the Arts, Create California, and the California Alliance for Arts Education. Thank all of them for their collaboration with us. We wouldn't, again, be able to do it without them. Last but not least, I want to thank those who worked on the report from Beacon Economics. You'll hear from Adam Fowler in a few, and all of those at Otis College who helped produce this event. Thank you to the speakers and to the library staff. And now I'd like to introduce Mei Li Ney, who is the chair of the Board of Trustees of Otis College of Art and Design. Mei Li joined the Otis College Board of Trustees in 2014. She's president of Richard Ney and Associates Asset Management, Inc., an investment advisory firm in Pasadena, which she joined in 1973. She also serves the boards of counselors of USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology and the USC Pacific Asia Museum. She's governor of the board of the Huntington Library and Art Museums and Botanical Gardens. She's active in a wide range of community and nonprofit organizations, including the Music Center, LA Opera, Caltech Associates, the Pasadena Educational Foundation, and the Huntington Hospital, and is director of the board of the Valley Hunt Club and was past president of the Town Club. Mei Li is deeply committed to the well-being of Otis College and its students, and I'm so pleased to invite Mei Li to the stage to welcome you on behalf of Otis College. Mei Li.
That's as low as it goes. Hi, everyone. As Jeffrey mentioned, I'm Mei Li Ney, chair of the Otis Board of Trustees. And on behalf of Otis College of Art and Design, I'm so pleased to welcome all of you here today to the launch of the 2020 Otis Report on the Creative Economy. This report was first published in 2007. It was the brainchild of then-President Sammy Hoy. At that time, it was 23 pages long. It was focused exclusively on Los Angeles, and the desire for the information and increased coverage was so great that it led to its expansion. And today, the report is 228 pages and covers the entire state of California and includes 5 major industries: entertainment and digital media, fine arts and the performing arts, fashion, creative goods and products, and architecture and related services. It shows that California and Los Angeles lead the nation in the creative economy. In fact, it has become a critical part of the global conversation. In 2019, this report was downloaded by people from over 60 countries. And today, I'm so pleased, and I'm looking forward to hearing its latest findings and to learn more about equity and arts education, along with you. Last year, Otis celebrated its centennial. That's 100 years of educating the future of the creative economy. And I'm so pleased to be a part of Otis and the fact that it serves to create opportunities to study art and design. It's so critical today. And that's just one of the reasons I'm so excited to be involved with Otis College. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Maylee, both for your commitment and for welcoming everyone here today. Now I would like to introduce Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, who will be providing some opening remarks. Since he was elected in 2008 and re-elected in 2012 and 2016 to the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, Mark Ridley Thomas has distinguished himself as an effective leader for more than 2 million 2nd District residents. Supervisor Ridley Thomas authored and led LA County's unprecedented effort to end homelessness through Measure H. He was board member of the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum Commission, and LA Care, the nation's largest publicly operated health plan. He is friend of one of LA County's foremost advocates of art and culture, spearheading the creation of the Department of the Arts. Prior to his election to the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Ridley Thomas served the 26th District in the California State Senate, where he chaired the Senate's Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development. While in the Senate, he served as chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus in 2008 and led the caucus in unprecedented levels of cooperation and collaboration with counterparts in the Latino and Asia Pacific Islander legislative caucuses. The supervisor graduated from Manual Arts High School and then earned a BA and MA degrees along with secondary and adult education credentials from Immaculate Heart College. Supervisor Ridley Thomas went on to receive his PhD in social ethics from the University of Southern California, focusing on social criticism and social change. Please join me in welcoming Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas.
Well, thank you very much. Delighted to be here, and special when we can wake up in the morning and find ourselves in Los Angeles, the best place on the planet to be. Do you agree with that? Yeah. That was an uninspired response. Do you agree with that? All right. I'm delighted to be here, and I'd like to acknowledge my team who backs me up and supports me and the things that we do in the arts and beyond. They sit right here and out there, over there, and everywhere. Give the team, MRT, a round of applause. Thank you very much. Last evening, I had the opportunity to be a part of the 28th annual opening of the Pan-African Film Festival. It's an extraordinary experience, unique to Los Angeles and this region. If you haven't had the opportunity, go online, see what the list of opportunities are there, Mark, and you will then find yourself blessed by the cultural enrichment and education that's happening right here in our own environment. Shout out to Freeze Los Angeles and the representatives who are here today. Freeze is doing the most, and it's making it happen right here. Give them a round of applause, won't you? Kristen Sakota, the executive director of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture. We give you your propers, ma'am, because you are going to make more things happen than anybody can imagine. You got it here, you got it right now, Kristen Sakota. Shout out to her. You're here to hear a keynote speaker, and we are delighted that Amir Whitaker is here to inspire you. That's a setup, brother, so you have to do your thing. But I'm here today just to say a word about this transformational moment in the county of Los Angeles, one where we understand the creative sector as not just a positive force for bringing communities together and a beacon of hope that inspires dialogue and change. It does that and more. It is that, and it will always be that. But it is also a moment where we, as detailed in this year's very fine report, 1 out of 5 jobs in Los Angeles County happens to be generated directly or indirectly by the creative economy. Very important. What we are seeing is a clearer reflection of our region, of dreamers, of storytellers, of innovators and visionaries as the indispensable components of the local economy and indeed the larger economy. Because of the data from reports such as this one, we're able to turn intuition into information, turn information into insights, and turn insights into action. And as I look around the room, I'm happy to see so many others from so many sectors who are on this mission with us as well. Yes, we are on a mission. And so from my seat on the Board of Supervisors and wherever I sit in the future, I'm committed to doing all that I can to continue the mission. It's a matter of economic competitiveness. It's a matter of strategic advantage. It's a matter of making Los Angeles all that it can be, all that it should be. It is the locus of what's new and what's next. That's how I see Los Angeles. And because not only does the creative economy take this big, this bold, this diverse, energetic region and state and help to reshape it, but it also provides such freedom of expression, artistic expression, opportunity to leverage our energies for the good of all. And so I want to say a big shout out and congratulations to Otis College on the release of yet another stellar report. I'm delighted that you are here. I'm glad to be here with you, and I trust that the balance of your time today will be as productive as you intend for it to be. Thank you very much.
Just want to give everybody here a lay of the land for the rest of our time together. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce Adam Fowler from Beacon Economics, who will be providing an overview of the results from the 2020 Otis Report on the Creative Economy. That'll be followed by remarks by Amir Whitaker from ACLU of Southern California, who will talk about equity and arts education. That'll be followed by a panel with some students talking about their experience, and then we'll end with a Q&A. We'll bring Adam back up. So save your questions until the end, but we'll have some time, and that will be followed by a reception in the lobby for those of you who are here. I want to introduce Adam Fowler, who's the Director of Research at Beacon Economics. In addition to overseeing the firm's research staff, Mr. Fowler leads the firm's housing, land use, real estate advisory, and works heavily in its sustainable growth and development practice. His projects focus on the creative industry, environmental economics, and domestic energy, housing and population trends, public opinion and attitudes, public policy analysis, and regional economics. Recently, he co-authored high-profile analysis of the film and digital media industry in Los Angeles and for the Los Angeles Economic Development Division, which revealed the specific effects of technological disruption in the industry and highlighted the competitive value of diversity. Other recent high-profile projects include an analysis and critique of California's regional housing goals for the public policy group Next 10, and he worked on the Creative Economy Report in 2019. Mr. Fowler holds a MA degree in political science from the J. William Fulbright College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, and pursued a PhD in political psychology from the University of California, Los Angeles. Please join me in welcoming Adam Fowler.
I feel like Melissa McCarthy on Saturday Night Live here driving around. Where is it? There we go. Good morning. We're excited to be here. First of all, I would like to thank all my colleagues that are not here. As the earlier speakers indicated, this is truly a labor of love. It is a project that runs over the holiday break for a lot of people, as data is released in the fall, and the publication timeline is early in the year. So thank you very much to all my colleagues at Beacon Economics who really are interested in this topic, go well out of their way to bring interesting insights and angles from both the empirical data and from our stakeholder and qualitative outreach. I want to also thank Jeffrey and his team at Otis. We've got a great report that is online. I'm only going to have time to tease a little bit of some of the deep dives we did this year. I've got a high bar to meet in terms of downloads, so I'm going to tell you to go to the otiscreativeeconomy.com, download it, especially if you're out of the country. So with that all being said, this, as was mentioned, was an ongoing project. I think now, looking back, it seems more intuitive to folks that the arts are an important part of the creative economy and an even more important part of our global economy. As we shift toward fears about automation, the future of work, one thing has continued to stand out, whether that's from peer-reviewed research at MIT, from industry analysis that we do, the skills and competencies that come from a creative education are not going to be automated. It's going to be more mundane tasks, things that are ones and zeros, not the skills and competencies that are found in a lot of creative occupations and make up a lot of our occupations that many people don't think of as creative. So as we do a lot of soul searching around the future of policy, one of the exciting things about this report is that it actually offers us a little bit of a street light or a light into the future to understand how changing skill sets will need to evolve as we move forward. The 2007 report looks a lot different. That's because oftentimes one of our goals in this report is to make sure that we are bringing the best data to bear. Oftentimes when I'm in front of crowds, I'm forced to reduce the economy into a few top-level aggregate metrics, and a lot is lost looking at the macro economy. If I tell you about GDP, if I tell you about the number of months of record economic growth, a lot is lost. And so it is 200 pages, but it's an important 200 pages because sometimes the additional data needs to be leveraged, new sources examined to really understand not only the disruption that's happening in the industry, but to make sure policy is driven by the values and priorities that we express, that data in a world of epic computing power isn't driving us toward incorrect ends. We're awash in data, and sometimes that can be a little overwhelming. So the report's length is important just because I think it does a very good job of helping give a landscape for policymakers. So quickly, as we mentioned, we focus on 5 creative industries: architecture, creative products, that's furniture making, toy manufacture, things in that vein, entertainment, digital media, fine and performing arts, and fashion. All of these are constantly changing, especially entertainment, digital media, fashion, architecture. As technology disrupts, the way the federal and state government captures industry information is often lagged. It's often hamstrung in the past. If any of you follow the debate around the census, that might be my Twitter feed and not yours, but adding new questions is a long process. So oftentimes, by the time industries have changed, data hasn't caught up. So it's important that we are constantly re-examining what we're reporting out on, that we're informing people on what the changes are. Again, you think about an organization like Netflix. When it was first founded, it was not a film studio. It was listed, I believe, under disc distribution. So if I was to give you a report about the film industry in Los Angeles at that period of time, you wouldn't have gotten disc distribution included in that. And that happens over and over again. So while we laud the power of data in this report, I stress in this time of both disruption and consolidation, it's important we're constantly reevaluating our assumptions in the data we're looking at. So overall, as folks mentioned beforehand, this report both looks at regions across California and Los Angeles. We're very excited to report out on the creative economy in parts of the state that aren't Los Angeles or San Francisco. We cover the entire state and aggregate up the nature of those creative economies. The manufacturing of fashion in the Inland Empire, not something that's kind of on top of mind all the time. The same for the Central Coast and Northern California. This report is very valuable for those art advocates and practitioners across our state, not just in the kind of coastal hubs where we think of art and innovation happening. Top level findings here, as you can see, when we include the 400,000 contractors, we're looking at 8% of California's total workforce. Over 1 million jobs in the state in these 5 industries, and capturing folks that are in the non-employer or the kind of contract gig work, which is a special feature this year in our report. We look at both those folks that are receiving a W-2. Those people are easy to count. Those folks that aren't, 1099s, contractors, gig workers, a little harder to count, a little harder to understand. And so we take extra time in this year's report to break those out. Those are important, especially in the entertainment industry, but we've seen growth in other industries, especially fine and performing arts around those contract workers. Overview, top level finding, annual average wage by creative sector. This hasn't changed a lot, but almost all these sectors beat the mean household incomes in all the counties we look at. The creative economies offer a middle-class household existence, and that's important. This industry data, while only capturing the W-2 employees on this specific table, is a good reminder, as those of us that talk with or work in education practitioners or work in educational institutions, that there are creative occupations housed in non-creative industries as well. And as this data reports out, these industries here support accountants, they support admin staff, they support a whole host of occupations that, while the creative locust is driving the business model, they are employing at a well-paying job a lot of other folks from different occupations. So we both are, in this report, are looking at those industries and the non-creative occupations that ride along with them. And in the places, I work in an economics firm. We like to think of ourselves as creative, but we are not listed as part of the creative economy. However, some of my colleagues that are on our data visualization team or on our graphic design team, I would argue are essential and would be those creative occupations. So this report is conservative in so many ways in terms of its reporting out, that it's important to keep in mind that the creative economy is very broad and deep in our state. Wage growth by sector. This is exciting to see from 2013 to 2018. As my bio said, I took a number of econometrics classes, but my department was not economics. So I'm always happy when my colleagues in economics, one of their theories actually works out, that wages go up when the supply of bodies is lower. And over the past economic expansion coming out of the Great Recession, we've seen an uneven distribution at times in terms of where the wage growth happened quickest. But now, almost uniformly across all the industries in our state, there is finally wage and household growth, and that is exciting. The last 3 years have seen movement on household growth around income, and that's very good. That's in part driven by one of the challenges our state faces, and I'll hit on in a moment, but the challenge around our workforce and our young up-and-coming workforce. And I'm so excited to hear the conversation after me around education, because that's so valuable. The pipeline of future creative workers is so important. As birth rates in our long-term economic models are declining across ethnic cohorts, as immigration slows to a standstill, the folks that are going to power, both as consumers and as our future workforce, that becomes a real big challenge that we're facing, not only in our creative industries, but across our industry sectors in the state. And offers us a real opportunity, I think, to lead in terms of being creative about workforce development, economic development opportunities in the creative economy. Economic impact, as it was teased earlier. Statewide, again, this accounts for supply chains. So when the artist buys a canvas, when the fashion designer goes and buys textiles, that supply chain is accounted for in both the indirect and induced employment effects here. So if there is a strong creative economy, those downstream effects, those food trucks that set up outside of a film or television shoot, those people's households are made better by that strong economic backbone in the creative arts. The total output is, again, a little bit down, but that is more of a function of the nature of firms in the geography in California than any sort of direct employment metric. So great numbers again this year, and it's good to see. As we continue month over month in the longest economic expansion since the Great Recession, it's good to see that these industries are strong. A few points of note, and I would refer you to the report, especially in Los Angeles. The fashion manufacturing continues a downward clip. That really hasn't quite stopped yet, and a function of that is manufacturing in general, and a function of that is the changing supply chain, distribution, warehousing, et cetera, around fashion. Again, we see tweets that Fashion Week in New York is not what it used to be. Folks like Tom Ford are moving to the West Coast to piggyback off of other creative opportunities, whether that's the Oscars or other television events. So fast fashion, the changing of the season, there's a lot going on in fashion that we're going to continue to follow, but a lot of our up-and-coming fashion folks and entrepreneurs here in Los Angeles are actually being classified under retail. So in future reports, I think that'll be an area we look at to better understand, but fashion continues a little bit of a decline year over year. A shifting landscape. One of the big things that we had questions about last year was the nature of what are called gig workers. What I would flag is that the terminology can vary by folks that are talking. And so I want to just use this opportunity to highlight a little bit about what we do know from reliable sources. There's a lot we don't. First of all, these folks are often referred to, they could be self-employed, these are 1099, they may be called contractors, they may go by a whole host of names. Some people like to think of them as entrepreneurs. They like to point to these numbers as where innovation comes from. So I would first flag that while gig is a new buzzword, the nature of this kind of work in the creative arts has been relatively stable as a whole. As you can see, under each industry sector we take a look at, we juxtapose those W-2 employees, those payroll jobs, against the folks that are listed in the self-employment data. And in only a few places have we seen a continued uptick. That being said, there has been an important uptick. Performing arts, 5% increase in recent years here in Los Angeles specifically, and a little bit of an uptick as well in architecture. The nature of RFP and bidding processes in architecture industries are requiring a little bit of a business model change based on stakeholder feedback. So those folks that are gig employees in architecture have been on the rise. we take a look here, and you see there, pegged to 2008 just for kind of intuitive purposes, that as we bottom out there in the Great Recession, in those early years, that year-over-year percentage increase. Where do we see gig workers increasing their presence? Fine and performing arts, which I'll come back to as an ongoing challenge. But fine and performing artists, in a good economy, you often see folks branching out, leaving or shifting to part-time in their W-2 job to pursue an opportunity of some form or fashion when they're feeling economically stable. Entertainment and digital media, that industry continues to grow here in Southern California at a real an expansionary clip. The streaming wars are really just beginning. You may have been hearing about them for a long time, but Disney Plus, HBO Max, we are nowhere near the end of that storyline. And as we see big consolidations, Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T, there's going to be a lot of change in the nature of entertainment employment, and the forward-looking nature of that is still yet to be determined. Again, as folks who live off residuals around their writing work are faced with less places for that work to show because of consolidation, we expect to see some changes in household income here, especially in Los Angeles. Employment growth by region, both the Inland Empire and Southern California, which is Los Angeles and Orange counties together, have seen quite a bit of growth there coming out of 2008. The other regions as well, there has been continued growth. The gig work is conceptually different than the informal economy. Again, another sector that is not really reported out in robust data. We often try to back that out, but you actually do see some growth in informal economy metrics when there is a downturn. So this trend is a little bit different than what you would expect during a downturn, where informal economy behavior activity often gives a little bit of an uptick. This gig work is occurring kind of alongside the growth we're seeing in the economy since the Great Recession. So closing, or getting close to closing, I want to highlight a few things we see as opportunities. One is arts education, and as an extension, workforce development. As the governor, as our new governor really ramps up his Go Biz and the economic development kind of statewide set of goals, we have been advocating for the creative economy to be included in that conversation. We see a lot of workforce development departments focus on things like manufacturing, logistics, very important, but I think there's a historical holdover. My hypothesis is maybe in the past it was a little awkward to promote the creative arts as a workforce development program. I'm not sure, I don't really have a way to test that hypothesis, but we continue to push our state leadership and national leadership to really think of arts education not as philanthropy and charity. It absolutely can be, but it should also be economic development. It should be workforce development. It's only going to increase its value as our economy relies on that and less on kind of rote tasks in our jobs. So it's a bit of a two-pronged story in terms of workforce development and education. Our higher education metrics, as this slide behind me sees, I'm not going to read off the data, but we've seen great, really strong growth over the past 5 years in degrees conferred. And you can see the nature of those degrees conferred, and you see that trickle down into the demographic data around those jobs in those industries. So there on the right, you can see the percentage of those creative workers in the industry with a degree. Entertainment and digital media has continued to climb. You see computer science, mathematics become degrees that are now mapping into, because of the technology components, into entertainment and digital media. That 66% we expect to continue to tick up. So the higher education story is strong. In the aggregate, we look very good. In our lower primary high school, junior high education, we continue to struggle in the wake of Proposition 13. There was a California before Prop 13, and there was a California after when it comes to education. And I know that is kind of a third rail sometimes, but in terms of arts education in California, that is the variable at play. And so we struggle in terms of our arts education funding writ large compared to other peer states that we think about as our creative economy peers and competitors. And we continue to have to push and advocate for that funding because it's so valuable in terms of a pipeline, opening up opportunities for folks in the future outside of just the college data we talked about. The final thing I will say in terms of challenges and opportunities, and I don't have a good answer, but I want to flag them for all of you in this room, is a number of our stakeholders across the 5 creative industries, there was noticeable anxiety around the AB5, the recent gig worker legislation, and its role in various creative occupations, especially with nonprofits, nonprofit theater groups, nonprofit groups in general. Transitioning folks to a W-2 employment is still a wide open question, and there's anxiety around how that's going to work. As we see those gig engagements increasing, I think it's important for everyone in this room, whether you're in arts advocacy or not, to understand that it's not, it really isn't, and we compare other occupations, but it's the story around gig employment isn't your Lyft and Uber driver. They're the folks that get the headlines for opposing or being kind of, and there's important conversations there, but a lot of the creative economy occupations are really those that are going to be impacted depending on how that legislation plays out. So that's something to keep on our radar, and we heard from a number of nonprofit and industry partners. The second thing we continue to hear about, and this is especially acute in Los Angeles, is space. The space, whether it's for industry growth, so whether it's soundstage space for small and upcoming production studios, for production firms, for individual creators, the big industry players have long-term contracts with most of our soundstage space. It's very hard to get new space online, given kind of the existing regulatory regime. And so that will continue to be a challenge. I think a lot of us are going to have to educate our colleagues and friends and neighbors about. The second part is space in terms of a bed to sleep. Our housing challenges here affect the creative occupations. While not in this report, we did run data on outward migration from the state by occupation. Arts, entertainment are impacted right along at levels of other work that often requires even less of an education. So our housing challenges are our creative economy challenges. Again, the ability to be creative, I think, is where the future is, especially in Los Angeles, as people think about extending hours of operation for creative space. That shouldn't just be a conversation about bars or nightlife. There are a lot of creative art and entertainment folks that need that space to perform, to have community, to store equipment. And so I think as much as possible to shift that away from a cocktail at 3 a.m. conversation to supporting our communities that can't afford to be in those spaces during normal business hours is going to be an important opportunity for us. With that, I would close with saying I saw a report from the Harris research firm, and it was sponsored in part by Lego, and it asked kids across a number of countries up to 13 years of age what they wanted to be when they grew up. And China, Russia, astronaut was the number one. You may or may not have seen this data. Twitter, as Twitter tends to do, had a lot of eye-rolling and kind of nasty reaction to the Western responses, which were in America and a lot of Western countries, the number one response was YouTube and vlogging. So yes, that was similar. Twitter was a little nastier. But what I would say is we should see that as an opportunity. those skill sets, whether they be getting folks into short documentary work at Snapchat, 5 or 6 minutes on phone native apps, those skills that come with that kind of work shouldn't be seen as ridiculous or naive. Those are often important skill sets that can be applied across a whole host of creative industries. Podcasting is seeing a real jump here in Los Angeles. Video games, that skill set that can be cultivated through that interest. I don't think, again, I think it's our own kind of bias around what that means. They didn't say celebrity on a red carpet. They said something very specific, and I take those folks seriously, and I think it's an opportunity for us to begin to see those skill sets as cross-sectoral and not siloed off in a dead-end job somewhere. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to any questions after the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I just want to put a point on Adam's statement about the report now being available for download at otis.edu/creative-economy/2020. I also want to welcome a whole bunch of students from Otis who are here today. I should have done that earlier, so I'm so glad that you guys are all here and excited for the next part of the conversation, which is on equity and arts education. I'm going to leave this high just in case you need it there. But so it's my great pleasure to welcome Amir Whitaker, staff attorney with the ACLU of Southern California, who will speak about equity and arts education, followed by a panel of students. Amir is staff attorney with the ACLU of Southern California. Prior to joining the ACLU, Amir represented students and incarcerated youth throughout Florida and Alabama for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Referred to as a civil rights and education stalwart by the Daytona Times, Amir has negotiated settlements and policy changes, improving the lives of hundreds of thousands of children. He's worked as a researcher with the UCLA Civil Rights Project and has written for Time Magazine and other publications. At the ACLU, Amir is responsible for legislation focused on education equity and funding. Amir has taught across multiple educational settings for more than a decade and has held teaching credentials in Florida, California, and New Jersey. He received his doctorate in educational psychology from the University of Southern California, Juris Doctorate from the University of Miami, and his bachelor's from Rutgers University. Often referred to as Dr. Knucklehead, Amir was arrested at age 15 and eventually expelled from school. In 2014, Amir started Project Knucklehead to inspire vulnerable youth and help them to keep their potential through education, music, and art programs. He is the board chair of the Arts for Incarcerated Youth Network, a collaborative of a dozen organizations providing arts programming to youth throughout LA County. So welcome, Amir Whitaker.
Thank you. Morning, everyone.
Just get you set up here.
Cool, so we're just getting this set up. Thank you for that presentation and information, Adam. It's what we like to call evidence, and some of what we've been using to help reframe our movement here that I'm going to share details about today. So I'm just honored to be in this space. And as you know, MRT said earlier, Los Angeles is a very magical place. It's one of the greatest places in the universe, and the arts are part of the reason why. It's why a lot of people come to the city or come back to the city. It's part of what inspired me to come back. But students don't have the same opportunities when it comes to arts education. Cool. So I actually have a presentation here today, and the art on it was actually created by a student here in Los Angeles who's a high school student for our arts justice movement. So I'd like to start by just talking more about the ACLU in case you're less familiar with who we are, to frame this movement within our larger movement. So we're the American Civil Liberties Union, civil rights organization, and like Otis College, we just hit our centennial, 100 years last year, and we've been involved in different cases throughout history, from the Miranda rights case, your right to remain silent, the marriage equality case for you to marry whoever you'd like, the Roe versus Wade, Brown versus Board, and now I like to say our arts justice movement. We're trying to elevate arts education to the same level as an important civil right. and we sue the government. So we've sued this current administration over 240 times, but we've sued previous administrations as well. We actually, thank you. We've sued several levels of county government as well. So just to show you who we take on and who I am, as was mentioned in my bio, you know, I relate to arts in different ways, and I say I'm a freedom fighter ×4. So as a civil rights lawyer, but also as the founder and director of Project Knucklehead, where I say when you have creative energy with no creative outlet, that's a recipe for trouble. So the youth you see in this picture here were, like myself, incarcerated and got into trouble, and through the arts found positive and productive means for their creativity. The Arts for Incarcerated Youth Network that contributes a lot to the creative economy. I believe there are 40 teaching artists employed through the different organizations represented just in LA County alone. And then there are a lot of other jobs within the creative economy as well. And then also as an artist and storyteller myself, I contribute to the creative economy and freedom. So my introduction into the arts, I share about it in my book. Does this have a pointer? Yeah. Here it's called The Knucklehead's Guide to Escaping the Trap, where it was featured in the New Yorker, where they talked about my experience with the art as sort of humanizing me. And I like to share this, where it says Whitaker was perhaps, let's see where we go. Here we go. You can see that Whitaker was perhaps not the archetype drug dealer. In between crack sales, he read poetry and fiction. And they talked about that as if, you know, if you're selling drugs, you don't have a thirst for the arts or literature. But the arts are used to humanize us as well and share our souls, right? That's why we view it as connected to the soul. So when we fight for it, we're fighting for the right for people to be connected to their soul and be human and be humanized. More about the right to art specifically. So we view the art as related to freedom of speech. So any barriers to arts education or arts access actually can be viewed as barriers to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So we look at limits to arts as freedom of speech. This is a campaign we did at the ACLU. You can see it at hashtag I read banned books, standing up for artists and authors who, for some of our favorite books, from The Color Purple to Beloved, to even Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, have been banned in different spaces and different schools and different institutions in America, impeding on the rights of the artists and the creatives. So when we talk about the right to art and the right to freedom of speech, it's related to that as well. But here in California specifically, students have the right to arts education in their school. And I'm going to share some of the data and some of what we're finding, where not only is there broad, basically non-compliance and ignoring of these laws, but certain communities have even less access to arts education, which means those students have less access to these 1 in 5 jobs that are here in Los Angeles. It was previously, or at least last year when I talked about this work, I'd always say 1 out of 6 jobs in LA are in the creative economy. So now it's 1 out of 5. So it's even more imperative that we ensure students have access to this sector. I actually have the law here, but it says, you know, visual and performing arts shall, it's in orange, that's one of our favorite words as lawyers, be included in school curriculum for all grades 1st through 6th, and, you know, and it's also the same thing for grades 7 through 12. I moved back here from Alabama where that wasn't the case, and other states students don't have that right. But yet and still, students have more access to it. And as was shared before, Prop 13 is viewed as kind of pulling the ground from under funding in education in California. So students in California also have the right to college access and evidence-based practices. So to get into one of the UCs or the Cal States or most universities in the state, you have to take an arts course in high school. Yet there are schools without arts courses in high school. So what that means is those students don't have access to college. And it's based off zip codes here. It's based off where you live. There's also the right to best practices. Schools are supposed to spend money on evidence-based best practices, and we know the arts are one of those things, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing them spend money on police and other things that don't improve student outcomes. And then at the federal level, there's new legislation called ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act. It replaced No Child Left Behind. And in that legislation itself, it says arts are essential to a well-rounded education. So even at the federal level, we see this emphasis and prioritization of arts happening. And as this event is all about, right, we have a creative economy, and students And citizens should have a right to that creative economy and a right to the preparation that will allow them to be employed by a lot of these organizations or pursue their own creative entrepreneurship, right? But if you're at a school that lacks access, then you're not being provided to that. So more about arts education and why we view it as a civil right. We're trying to elevate it to the conversation to more than just, oh, you know, you're not providing this extracurricular or supplemental education opportunity to your students you're violating their rights, and it's one of the most critical rights that we're trying to elevate. So we know there's unequal access across communities, and I'll share some of the data specifically. But we're more familiar with what's called the achievement gap or the opportunity gap, where students of color don't achieve as much, don't attend college as much as their white counterparts. The art gaps that we see are actually a part of that, because we know the arts increase social development, academic performance, intellectual development. Project Knucklehead students have shared it was the reason why they wanted to come to school, so attendance and other things. So we know the arts increase this. So by a certain group of students having access to the art that other students have, we are giving them an advantage, and that's what contributes to the achievement gap. There are lots of other things that contribute to the achievement gap, and these art gaps are one of them. So that's why it's a civil rights issue, and we have to, if we want to do something about the achievement gap, we'll have to do something about these arts gaps. And it's part of the perpetual and historical cultural inequality. There's been cultural genocide on people throughout history and just their right to their own culture, but now it's just the right to any culture. It's a part of that. And it perpetuates historic inequality, right? Again, if you don't have that competitive advantage in your high school and you can't apply to those schools in college, then you can't compete economically on the same level. And that's why it's a civil rights issue. And we view it as part of the continued struggle for freedom. So Brown versus Board over 60 years ago, fighting for equal education. The Melendez case, here in California, that was fought in a federal courthouse not too far from here, about 70 years ago, fighting for equal education. So we know education is still not equal today. And the art gaps that I'll share with you are part of the reason why, and that's why it's part of a civil rights movement. And it's part of the school to prison pipeline. By a show of hands, how many of you have heard of something called the school to prison pipeline? Okay, great, nice, a lot of people. So we've represented students suspended for beating on their tables in class, students suspended for dancing and other things. So sometimes it's creative expression coming out that's being suppressed in the environment or criminalized in the environment, and that's part of the school to prison pipeline that leads to thousands of students in California being arrested every year. And students always also have a right to competency, and with this, I like to share this Einstein quote that you've probably heard this quote, right? Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid, right? And then this is our education system, and it's someone who says, all right, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Students can demonstrate their competency and their skills and their intelligence in different ways. And if the school is in a creative environment that allows for that, you can go through your public education system feeling stupid and feeling like, you know, you don't have the right intelligence when they're really multiple intelligence. So now I want to share more about the data when it comes to the incomplete, separate, and unequal education access. All three are really important. Let's just start by comparing California to other states. So we're in the red here with just 39% of California students enrolled in the arts course who had an opportunity to take an arts course. You can go next door to Arizona, and it's 68%. And you can go to other states, it's higher. In North Carolina, it's almost twice as much with 75%. And we know California's wealth could be as much wealth as all these states combined, right? If it were its own country, it would be 5 or 6, right? So we know there's a lot of wealth and a lot of money here, and even the arts, right? We know that that's a legitimate leading sector here. Yet we're not able to provide our students with opportunities. So this is a travesty and embarrassment for our state. And if you look across the state, you see this vary. In this art, you can find Create California has a map, and they're here today. hope they have some materials to share. But their website tool, it shares this where you see by county. So the areas that are blue are more than the state average, more than 39%. So here in LA County, we're about there, but we're not where Arizona is, right, which would be the dark blue, or other states. But you see by county, the arts access can vary significantly by which county you're in. And oh, this is a really important number too. No arts enrollment. There are over 80,000 students in schools with 0 arts. And actually, this is just capturing the secondary data. California is the only state that doesn't collect elementary data. So if you add that, it's over 200,000 likely. So if you look at access by race and by discipline, you see even more inequalities and more separate. So this first one on the left, this first combination of bars represents music access. And blue represents schools that are predominantly African American. And what this shows is only 60% of those schools have access to a music teacher, compared to over 93% of schools where the students are mostly white. And you see these inequalities and incomplete access across music, art, theater, media arts and entertainment, and then dance. But when you look at dance specifically, you see it, all students are underserved, right? And all schools are violating the rights to arts. If all students in California have a right to dance education, where should this be? At the top, right near 100, or at least better than 10% for black students, or even 33% for white students. 1 out of 3 schools. That's still not enough. That's still very inadequate. California has a large number of charter schools. They're 10% of California schools, but 36% of the schools that offer 0 art. And there's some charter schools that do phenomenal work and have amazing arts access. They're based off the arts, but there are a lot that just completely ignore it. And the schools that are most likely to have 0 arts are often charter schools. And then, of course, economically, you see the same thing. So this is the same access of the different disciplines, but we're looking at income instead of race. And the orange represents schools that are 76% or more free or reduced lunch. So, which is, unfortunately, that's the average almost for a lot of schools here in LA, right? And you see there, only 23% of those schools have access to dance, compared to almost 40%, 39% of schools with higher income students. So these are all public schools, right? And we're supposed to have equal access. And this is really important because a few years ago, the ACLU, we filed a case against the state of California, but also against certain districts. Inglewood was one of them, but it was in allyship because at Inglewood High School, the students only had 3 AP courses. And at Beverly Hills High School, the students had 20. And anyone who's applied to college in the past 5 years know you need a 4-point infinity GPA to get into one of the Cal States or the UCs. I know people who took 5 AP courses and still got waitlisted, right? Because the weighted GPA supports you. So our client was a student at the school who was a math whiz by all measures, and instead of being placed in AP math or calculus, she was placed in sewing because the school didn't have access. So, you know, we sued the state and was able to unlock some funds to ensure more equal access to AP courses, because your zip code, your school should not determine your college possibilities, right? We said that ended a long time ago, but we're still here fighting this fight, and you still see it when it comes to schools serving students of color. And one of the last charts I'll end with here just looks here in Los Angeles if we look at art funding. So 2008, this was before the recession really took impact, and we saw the green represents spending on arts. So there was almost 80 million, 78 million a year being spent on art in LAUSD, and about 51 million a year being spent on police. Everything dropped with the recession, funding for a lot of things, a lot of positions, a lot of teachers were cut. But when it comes back to what's climbed back, you see arts are still at 31 million compared to where they used to be 80 million. And funding for school police has shot up. Now it's actually over 80 million. So the two have switched completely. So it's not just about lack of funding. Sometimes it's improper priorities sometimes, and the criminalization of kids, because here in Los Angeles, we know there are actually more police in schools than dance and theater teachers. And students who go to school in Hollywood High School, North Hollywood High School, schools that are right near the stars, won't have the opportunity to take theater in their courses, but they'll be greeted by police officers. And this is a tool we have that you can access. This is the website right here, aclusocal.org/edjustice, where if you want to look more about the tools in your school, in your community, or compare arts access, you can look at this as well. And I have some of the charts that we shared today. And you can look at it by race, by school type, because it's also schools serving youth who are incarcerated or court-ordered schools. Juvenile justice schools have less access. Schools serving students with special education needs have less access. English learners, schools with high percentage of English learners, students aren't given arts access because they're being placed in other courses. So you can see more of that there as well. I don't think I have time to talk about this, but in Los Angeles, one of the specific cultural and art criminalization policies, they're confiscating items like these as contraband as part of a random search policy that students are subjected to that costs over $500,000 a year. And over 60% of what they're actually taking are art supplies. And this was something the student created. It said, you know, they make them feel safe instead of targeted. They took the art supplies that were being confiscated and created this, and we took it to the Capitol to share their expression. But this is an actual log from here in Los Angeles. Luckily, we ended this policy, and it ends this year. But here you see they're taking markers, scissors, even a hair pick right here. They're confiscating hair picks, which I can't go more than like 6 hours without. So here, went to the school board meeting, Exhibit A. I took that hair pick to the school board meeting. We had students there as well we were supporting, and we were able to end this policy in Los Angeles. So this is from that day last year where we ended the policy. Thank you. But one student shared a story that resulted from that policy. When she was in middle school, she had an anxiety attack after they confiscated her, what they called a tagging book. It was a book that art school would consider her portfolio. But they said, okay, this is gang, graffiti, blah, 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 and they took it and she had an anxiety attack. All behind this policy to end random searches or this policy to find weapons. And they were criminalizing art because of it. So art criminalization or soul suppression, or what some of our students actually call creative dead zones in their school, come from not just not having arts education, not having an arts teacher, but also other policies within the school-to-prison pipeline that might criminalize creative opportunities. And as we see that creative skills are becoming more and more of the backbone of our economy and of our workforce, we really need to dismantle these systems that don't allow for creative expression and don't support creative expression. And that's my presentation for today. Thank you. Thank you. So now I believe we're going to call Adam up for Q&A, to continue the Q&A. Oh, actually, yeah, that's right, the student panel. Cool. So yeah, I'm honored right now to invite some students up who will share the story, students both at Otis College and also here in Los Angeles. So I'm going to read the bios here. Cool. So the first student is Alicia Boone, who's a junior at Fauché Learning Academy. She grew up in Los Angeles and has been interested in art for her entire life. Art has inspired her throughout her life, fueled by watching early 2000s cartoons. I guess that's that SpongeBob era. She enjoys drawing, sketching, and filmmaking. After high school, she hopes to attend film school and become a showrunner or creator of a cartoon. Alicia, let's come up. And our next student, Juan Cruz, is a junior at Otis College. You can have a seat right over there. Is a junior at Otis College of Art and Design, and he's studying digital media and with an emphasis on animation. So he's from San Bernardino originally, and he works as a tutor and academic success coach with the Student Learning Center at Otis, as well as a digital image artist for career services in hopes of one day becoming an art director. So Juan Cruz, please come up and join us. Ooh, thank you. And last but not least, we have Daisy Rojas, who was born in Los Angeles. She transferred to Otis College of Art and Design in her sophomore year as a communications arts major with an illustration area emphasis. but felt a stronger calling towards graphic design as an area of emphasis. Her passion for creativity is also present outside of school, where she runs her own boutique design studio called Dog Knit Sweater. She is now in her last semester of senior year and currently interning at Illumination Entertainment in Santa Monica. David. Cool. So thank you all for joining us for this panel. And we had one more student, Arlene Campa, who is unfortunately sick with the flu right now, but she sent a statement that she would like for us to read. That'll be okay? And I'm going to come over and join you all here. And actually, it'll probably be more fitting if a fellow high school student reads this statement instead of a 35-year-old guy. So I'm going to ask Alicia if she would read the statement from Arlene Campa. She's our Arts Justice Fellow at the ACLU and is really passionate about this issue, but she couldn't join us today because of the flu, but she wanted her voice heard.
Hello? Okay. Art is a universal language. It can be used as a means of spreading ideas and facilitating cultural exchanges. Art serves as a gateway between imagination and reality. By being exposed to arts at a young age, I was able to interpret and process the world around me and produce something tangible. Art has also facilitated a change in how I view community, as it became a way for me to manifest the society I had dreamed of, a place where we could exist with empathy and equality while nurturing joy and justice, a world where we dissolve borders and barriers and celebrate every life. I use my imagination to heal, to ignite change, to illuminate resilience and reinstate hope. My art is my future. Creating art also made me conscious of how I observed the world and interacted with the world around me. As I began to engage with the art world, I began to realize it didn't greet my community with the same open arms I had been received with. I come from a community of color where most families are low income, and it didn't take me long to realize that they did not have the same access to art as I did. I had artistic opportunities that seemed unfathomable. I had my art gallery show at 14, designed a cake for Sister Mary's Corda Ken's 1000th birthday party at 15, and have held workshops at LACMA, MoCA, and other major museums across Los Angeles. My friends in the community didn't seem to have art classes once a week. It became my goal to fight to ensure every student had equitable art to the arts, regardless of their ethnicity, socioeconomic background, or place of residence. We need to ensure that we all have access to an equitable arts education. We need resources to be invested in a high-quality delivery system, starting with early education and continuing through elementary, middle, and secondary education, with the inclusion of all student populations, including those participating in special education. We need to support the professional development for all visual and performing arts teachers to support the implementation of new art standards. We need to invest in programs that promote career pathways related to arts education. We need a multi-year investment in the implementation of arts education in every school and every district, with special emphasis being given to the most underserved districts in both rural and urban areas. If I've taken anything away from my arts education, is that art is a catalyst for change. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then through arts education, we are able to start conversations. We can reclaim our narratives and tell our stories the way that we want them to be told. We are the risk takers and peacemakers of the rest of the world. We just need lawmakers and school officials to provide us with the tools we need to succeed.
Thank you for that, Arlene. She's probably watching in on the live stream and hopefully feeling better. So let's start out by just asking the same question. What are some of the barriers you face to your creative pursuits? And maybe we can start over there on end with Daisy. Just different things you've encountered, you know, as a high school student just coming up, but also as you studied and how you've overcome them.
Sure. So in high school, I was fortunate enough to have at least one arts course. So of course I took advantage of that. But also I'm first generation Mexican American. And in my culture, I think like the way my parents saw me wanting to become a professional artist was, it was more of like a hobby for them. Like they wanted me to pursue a more secure, comfortable like government job. Like I think they wanted me to be a mail woman at one point because they were like, you need to have security and like, yeah, all of this. Great benefits. And I just couldn't stand the thought of doing that. So I did everything I could in my power to prove to them that I could apply to an art college and build that portfolio to get into an art college and pursue my dreams of becoming a professional designer and artist. So I think culturally, I think a lot of students of color like me and people here face that second barrier or like other barrier of like having to explain to their families that this is actually a career path that you can follow and strive in. So that's, yeah.
I would say very similarly. I come from a family of immigrants. Same thing. They didn't think that art was in any sort of way like an actual career. They wanted me to be a lawyer, a doctor, someone who would be of importance, like for us, right? And then coming from like an area of poverty, my school did not really give any actual funding to the arts. Like they were very sports centric, international baccalaureate centric. Like they cared about where they were gonna get money from back into the school, not really about what's gonna get these students, out and rising and succeeding in their careers. So back in high school, I really had to. I mean, I had a lot of help, but I had to really forge my own career path in terms of art when it came to that. And then the struggles of like convincing my parents, like, yes, this is a career, like just let me do what I want, like I'll be fine, was also like a long and multiple arguments that happened.
I'm fortunate enough to have my mom having supported my art dreams from when I was a kid. So like I'm very fortunate for that. But same as what you call it, is that what you call it? Like my biggest struggle with arts education is that, again, like not in our schools, not in low-income communities of color. I go to a school called Fauché Learning Center, and there we don't have any art classes, any hands-on art classes, which puts me at a disadvantage for college because at most colleges you need a resume, you need a portfolio, you need to have like experience with these classes, and when you don't have that, like you're already like being at a disadvantage from the start before you even start applying or even thinking about going to college. So, yeah.
All right, and Alicia, while you're speaking about the school, can you share the story of what you did at your school to help increase arts access?
Okay. So I'm a junior, so I'm just starting to look at like college applications, looking at the college I want to do, majors and all that good stuff. And so I've been researching CalArts, like the big art colleges, and I realized that with these colleges, I need to have X years amount of art. And I didn't think about it before of how important art should have been in my curriculum throughout all these years, because I've been at this school since middle school, and I haven't had an art class. And so I decided that, art is important, and I think that's like the main problem why we don't have it in our schools, especially low-income communities. It's not seen as important. Like you said, like it could be seen as just a hobby, but like for some of us, like it's our lifestyle. Like it's what we like breathe. It's what we do like every single day. It's not just something that we push to the side. Like, oh, I like to do this in my free time. Like, no, this is my life, and I want to do this in the future. So I need experience in it. So I decided to create a petition and to show our principal and our administration that we do care about art and that we do need these courses at our school. So I created a petition and I made a group chat with my friends so we can spread the word for it. So we spread the word like via social media for about 3-4 days, and we were able to get over 90 signatures from different schools, communities, teachers of schools I never even heard of before, different states, like just like this universal like support and getting us our class at our school. So then I set up a meeting with my principal to talk about the petition and see all the like enormous support that we got upon it, so she can see like this is a big thing. Like it's not just me asking for this. There's a bunch of students here, different schools who wish, even students that graduated from my high school who wish they would have had the opportunity at an art class and had to like change what they wanted to do or take extra years in college so they can get the experience for it. So I had a meeting with my principal over it, and we were able to institute an after-school art program for students who want to take it so they can at least get some experience with it that offers college credit as well, being provided by LACC. So it was a big win on our part, and we're still working on getting it toured during school. So. Thank you. And we're working on getting it during school because not everyone has the opportunity to take it after school. Some people have to babysit or they have an after-school job to support themselves or something. Not everyone is privileged enough to take an after-school course, especially since art is supposed to be in the curriculum during school. It's not supposed to be an after-school push-off thing. So yeah, we're working on that.
So now please share more like what we can do to support the creative development of students and of youth, you know, not just in our schools, but as a city, what kind of opportunities we can create that will help foster the creative development. Like I shared some of the policies that are killing creativity, but what else can we do to encourage those skills and development?
I'm gonna go. I think just offering more opportunities within communities that relate to art. Like I know, I don't know if you guys heard of South LA Cafe. They have like a whole bunch of like opportunities there where you can like go to the cafe with your friends and do like a bunch of artistic stuff there. But just having more of those kind of creative spaces for students who don't really have an outlet at home or at school will like better influence like the creative community within students or students who like want to be creative to have that option at least.
Oh, and while you're talking about this, can you share how you came to Otis College and your experience with that?
So considering how my school doesn't have an art class, I figured the only way I can get an opportunity and experience with it is to go somewhere else. So I researched different like, art courses, art classes at colleges that are local to me, and I found out about Otis. So I applied for a 2D animation course there with Mr. Enoch Davis, and I was luckily accepted like, the day before. It was so hectic, but I went. It was on Saturdays. So I participated in that course and I finished it, and I'm glad that I took it, even though now I realize animation is too tedious. But what you call it? I'm grateful that I got the opportunity to do that, but like with that, I'm very privileged to have taken that course because a lot of students at my school who want to do animation, so they can see how tedious it is, they won't have that. They won't have that opportunity.
Yeah, let's give it up for Otis College for creating those opportunities. Where our schools are failing, the universities are stepping in. But opening that question up for everyone.
Well, as an animator, I'm a little sad about that, but I know when it came to my high school, right, the art courses that they did have, they were very fundamental, which is fine, right? But I think it really comes to having that access to other opportunities like digital entertainment and like game design, all this like big, huge new push in this medium, not even like looked at my school. Like Adobe products, all this digital programs, they were nothing. I mean, we didn't even have like actual life drawing. Like we just kind of like looked at objects and then like drew that, and then that was like the education, right? That was our. I think what happened with my school is that they went, okay, what is the bare minimum requirements that we can allow for this to be considered an art course, right? And my teacher was very nice. She wanted to push to give us so much more. But when it really came to administration and funding and priorities, I think that was the biggest thing, is that despite how vocal the students might have been, the priorities at the upper levels is where things needed to change. We just weren't seeing that. So I think one of the best ways to like really help that is, I mean, a wonderful example here is that the petition, right? Like that, I wish I had thought of that, honestly. I wish I could like go back and do that. But no, it's like petitioning to like really demand the need for like that equal opportunity, because that in itself is like, I didn't realize how big this like creative economy was, right? When I decided, oh, I'm going to be an animator, I'm going to get into like this entertainment industry, I was doing it out of a passion, not because I thought like I was going to be able to live off of it. I hoped I would, but
What your parents were afraid of.
yeah, that's what my parents were afraid of. But no, I just wish that like more students that like I know back home would have loved to continue doing this. Like I have so many friends who had the same aspirations as I did, and we all worked together. And then I came out here, and they decided to take other paths, and I hope the best for them. But I really wish they were able to do what they were passionate about, and they just didn't get that chance.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like being a graphic designer, I'm working in the digital realm, and I think that we need to create opportunities for students who know they want to work in animation or any digital artistic field, and create opportunities for them. Like, yeah, we have fundamental art classes, and those are the backbone of being an artist, but also like looking at Los Angeles as a landscape for the entertainment industry, and like finding paths for students who want to go into that to guide them towards that. Yeah.
Nice, cool. So now we're going to open it up for questions. And ask Adam to come join us, please. All right. So now we'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. I believe you can raise your hand, and there are microphones in the audience, and we can, and question over there.
Hi, this is a question for Adam. I just have a question in regards to the guided pathways that is being implemented in community colleges, kind of along with that AB, I forget the number. They're really trying to streamline education into a very A to B. So how is the creative fields represented in this new guided pathways paradigm, and is it represented?
It's starting to be. Anecdotally, when we've reached out to stakeholders to talk about the investments around things like green screen or technology advancements, for example, you know, as soon as the kind of infrastructure catches up to implement that, to build out a robust set of both the technology, you know, having the Adobe platform, for example, those things are very valuable. The green screen technology, the camera technology. Technology changes, and you know, it's on to blue screen now, it's on to other things, and so there's always a catching up. I think we can't underestimate the value of transparency around what these things are and where they live. I have heard time and time again, and one of the nonprofit organizations I think does just brilliant work, Ghetto Film School. They talk about talking and bringing the parents along for the ride. I'm a first-generation college student from rural Arkansas. My parents were not hip to the arts either. And I mean, an economist, maybe they're less cringy now, but I took some time off to do a documentary film, and it about put my mother in the grave. So I think bringing those folks along and making it transparent, again, even in especially film and digital media, the below-the-line opportunities, what labor opportunities are in unions, making that more transparent, understanding how you get in, where you go, what that looks like, I think is huge. And I think the community colleges are doing a good job. It's just, in a period of disruption, it's just very hard. Hopefully I answered your question. I'm not sure. I tried.
Hi, this question is for Adam. It's from here. Anyway, my understanding is that I watch a lot of PBS televisions, and I know that I noticed that creative economy is a big part of England, basically, and I understand that our economy, just California, it has surpassed England's economy. It's about 2.7 trillions versus them at 2.5 something trillions as the economy as a whole. But because of England has a government I kind of support the creative economy, so their number is about 100 billion pounds, which is more than $100 billion. And for California, it's about maybe 400 something billion dollars. Are you planning on working with Mr. Ridley Thomas to talk to, I guess, the California, Sacramento, basically, to help push it along? Because we are bigger than England economy-wise, but we don't have as much support. It's a big part of, I mean, the creative economy is huge. So you have any plan on that?
Yeah, we're trying to make an advocacy argument any time we can. Again, the staff and myself, we're very passionate about this topic and always have been. I don't know if it's human cognition or what, but sometimes like the kind of emotional or values please people kind of like don't pay attention, and sometimes when you throw down a portfolio of data in front of them, all of a sudden you're to be taken seriously. So we try to use that kind of flawed logic for good. We try to deploy data to make an argument. Again, like the most cynical point of view, you don't care about, like, if you care about the economy, you care about the future of the economy, there's an angle on the argument to be made. The other jurisdictions you highlight, Canada as well, that have very kind of robust governmental infrastructure around the creative economy, industry, kind of long-term plans where we don't as much in the U.S., is a challenge. When we did the report last year, for example, we spoke to kind of governmental counterparts in both Canada and the UK, and they are, in terms of government resources, really ahead of the United States and California in terms of laying the groundwork for building a robust pipeline, bringing communities along. Again, what I've been so excited and proud of over the series of the last couple of years is the County of Los Angeles, Mark Ridley Thomas, his colleague, Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, have been moving really for California and Southern California to be thought leaders again in this space. We worked on a report that was highlighted in my bio around the diversity of our stories, the diversity of our county is very valuable. It's an important part of what the future of digital content is going to look like, and we need to make sure that access is available, and that, you know, tax credits and other kind of short-term things that jurisdictions are throwing at the creative economy don't leave us in the past. The kind of idea that we are going to look backward toward our days as a Hollywood kind of powerhouse. They seem to be over here, at least with the leadership in Southern California, and that's exciting. And I think to the extent we can push that message at Sacramento, it's important as well. I mean, these stories up here are heartbreaking. These are lost opportunity, lost productivity, lost, you know, I can rattle off 17 different economic metrics on what this actually translates into GDP and other things we care about that help the common good. And so it shouldn't be a struggle to have an arts class in the progressive fifth largest economy in the world, and yet it is. So we will continue to throw data, make arguments in as many ways as we can for the folks that will listen or take our calls.
Hi, to follow up on your question, or to your point about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would like to know, how is that topic discussed in the Otis Report, and were there any key findings related to the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
This year, we ran the data. Last year was our first year we really pushed to include that. Year-over-year changes in the occupational data are very minimal in terms of the way the census collects American Community Survey. That is the backbone of our work on that space. So I would tell you that the findings are virtually unchanged from last year's report. Again, we were at 200, and folks had wanted to look at the issues around the gig economy. The arts department, the LA County Arts Department, has released some really fantastic reports over the last year or 2 years digging into those. So hat tip to their brilliant work. That data is not, is that you? Kudos. That data is not easy. What is exciting is both the LA County and the city are beginning to think about procurement as a way to help those smaller firms and the individuals they represent. Again, I think that data will be important, but the data is weak on a lot of those things we care about. Small firms in these spaces, it's very, very hard. Again, that is an area I'm passionate about. We've just got to bring together a coalition to really both funders and thinkers to dig in deep. But in the vacancy of that, I think the arts department's really leading the charge on the reporting on that, from what has come across my desk.
My question is for Amir. So my name is Sean. I'm a junior in graphic design at Otis College of Art and Design. I'm a full-time student, and I work part-time in arts education in juvenile detention centers throughout Los Angeles, in East LA, and up in Sylmar. And a part of like working with incarcerated youth and being in the field, like at ground level, the majority of the jobs or gig jobs are like contracted work around theater or literary writing, but a lot of the students struggle with basic hard skills around computer science, and I'm a graphic designer, so at times I would suspend just the basic like illustrations and writing and kind of show them operating systems, like how to open up Microsoft Word, for instance, or even save a file, work through a operating system. And I've been really kind of struggling. Sometimes I would just show them how to do graphic design. So I wanted to know, has there been any conversation at administrative level or at a law level to incorporate more like computer science, computer art, where these kids can actually use hard skills once they get out, because they use it as a way to, like teachers, which is like, oh, you're here, I can just relax now, because, you know, and it's not real arts education. It's just leisure time for teachers and students to kind of just have a moment of creativity, but they aren't learning any technical skill.
Right. No, thank you for your work, Sean. And that's a barrier because some facilities don't even have computers, you know, for the students. And of course, internet access is a whole nother thing. You know, they won't allow that access. And what Summer's trying to do, I don't see it enough in the facilities, but, you know, the STEAM thing where they're doing technology and arts, they're adding the A to, you know, science, technology, engineering, math, and they add some arts integration into that. As was mentioned a few times, Adobe and different softwares now, it's kind of assumed that you have some functional knowledge of that in basic stuff, and students there are getting left behind. And then some of it is like, you know, the licensing, if the students have access to Microsoft Word and different softwares. But there's a huge digital divide in there that contributes to the access issue. And then, as you shared, students come to it without any knowledge as well, so you end up having to do a lot for that. And I think, you know, where you are, those are the students who need it the most, right? Those are the students who need something productive to do with their time because they've demonstrated that they haven't been able to use it positively. So we really need to make those investments there.
Hi, this is a question for Amir. And full disclosure, I am the Dean of the College of Arts and Letters at Cal State LA. So I'm wondering if you could comment on the role of California's excellent higher education system, which has an open access community college system, a Cal State University system with minimal barriers to entry for California students, and the UC system working to right the really systemic inequities in arts education at the K-12 level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those pipeline teacher education courses are really important too, because part of the issue now is we don't have enough arts teachers, right? We don't have enough dance teachers. We don't have enough theater teachers. That's not a good enough excuse, right? Because there are a lot of teacher artists and we can do pipelines. And part of the reason why there isn't the demand is not because there isn't a supply. It's just because districts aren't investing in the funds and advertising for those positions. But yeah, the university is essential, and there has to be more courses like what Alicia's, you know, she was able to take a visual arts course, not because of her high school, but because of the local colleges and universities, and those kind of opportunities, you know, creating access for it as well. But we need thousands of more arts teachers. So the teacher education programs at the Cal States, like here in LA, in this area specifically, we have to develop some sort of pipeline program there are hundreds, if not thousands of teaching artists in the city that could go into a pipeline at Cal State and become credentialed. And so those are the kind of things we need to see as well.
Hey, Pat Wayne with Create California. I just want to give a shout out first to the students that we should never be having this conversation without student voice. And they should always be afforded the same respect and attention as the adult presenters. So thank you to the three of you for being a part of this. Often as adults, we're like, what can we do for the students? And we always need to hear what you're thinking. And then the other thing I want to say is I so appreciate, Amir, your work and what you're doing, and this report, Adam, is we use it all the time in our work. And just want to say that every one of you in this room is a voter in a school district. And you are now armed with this report, and you are armed with what the education code says. And so you are, as a voter in a school district, you can contact that school board or superintendent and ask, you know, what are you providing for students? How are you complying with this, especially 1 out of 5 jobs? So powerful, such a powerful reminder of how by not offering it, we're blocking students from all those jobs. And why would we do that? So thank you. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to compliment you.
She's been waiting first. She raised her hand first. Adam or Amir, whoever feels like wants to answer this question, but in relation to diversity and representation, both on the socioeconomic and racial and gender equality, representation in the creative economy, how does it correlate with the overall economy as far as representation goes? Like, is it more or less? And how do they relate to each other? Does the creative economy lead in as far as, and that affects the overall economy as far as representation, or the other way around?
I wouldn't say it leads. It depends. It's a kind of complicated series of causal relationships you've outlined there. One of the frustrating parts, and why we work very hard to kind of triangulate with empirical data from kind of official government sources and other creative data collection methods, is that things that often matter around these questions aren't captured, aren't asked. And so we've been pushing for a long time on some of these questions. You know, we've sat on panels before about the questions that are asked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we've just got to continue to push to start counting these things that matter. Again, I think back a couple years ago when just getting the kind of information about LGBTQ plus people into the census was an uphill battle. I mean, you can just think about that just in terms of household information is also a barrier in so many ways to the data collection process from the various economic products the census and other folks offer. So it does the creative economy. The nonprofit sphere is more diverse, oftentimes, on average across the 5. Entertainment, digital media, the 5 as they're organized now. There's still a lot of work to be done if you're trying to like benchmark that against like just distribution of these characteristics in the local population. We're a ways away. So. But again, good policy is oftentimes hard. You know, I think about the procurement initiatives where the county and city are saying, if a small firm with diverse ownership or other metrics wants to participate, we're spending all this money, say, for the Olympics or other things that are coming forward, we want to target those. Just knowing who to target and if you're doing a good job at targeting or is so in the dark in terms of the data we can deploy very well. So until we start to bring these questions into the kind of qualitative or quantitative infrastructure, it's going to continue to be hard to make that case.
Just echoing that, we have a long way to go. You know, California is very diverse. It became more diverse fast, and we're still catching up. And you can see what last week at the Oscars, right? That's part of the creative economy. Hashtag Oscars so white. So we have a long way to go before everything, and even in arts education, the leadership, the teachers, and everything, before those demographics reflect the demographics of the contemporary people, we have a lot of work to do.
We're going to take our last question.
Oh, okay, that's me. This is a question. I'm over here in the corner, in the dark. Hello. Hi there. This is a question for Amir, and with backup, Adam, if you have the answers. You spent a lot of time discussing the number of schools overall that provide arts education. Can you also include the many, many nonprofit arts education organizations here in Los Angeles County that get their grant money for servicing low-income schools, and tell us how they factor into how their dollars factor into your reports about how many of those schools have it? Second part is, we know legislation doesn't work in terms of allegedly requiring arts education in schools. So we've got this big bridge here, bridge the gap here. We have opportunities through these organizations to service the schools, and resistance from the schools to accept the service or whatever. Is there a creative, innovative solution that can leap this gap, make it work, that we haven't thought of yet, that you and maybe the students can come up as a suggestion?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And there are lots of great arts organizations, community-based organizations doing amazing work to provide arts and fill the gaps where there are no credentialed teachers and schools don't create those opportunities. We still don't, when it comes to college access, those students, that's not sufficient for those students. They need a credentialed teacher teaching them if they want to go to a Cal State or a UC, and that sort of thing. So in high school, there's less flexibility with that. We still encourage the partnerships, and in California, we shared all 5 or 4 arts are required. So the only way, it's going to take some village to do that with partnerships with organizations. But we really need to make some investments in the credentialed teachers too, and into programs and taking them from these arts programs, right? Maybe creating a pipeline for them to go from teaching artists to credentialed teachers as well. And yeah, so it's not captured in the data, unfortunately, because LA County is one of the only counties that does a report where they capture that, but the state currently doesn't collect that.
There are some ways, and in last year's report, we looked at various jurisdictional levels in the state of New York versus here in California. So, you know, Arts Commission kind of grants separate from any sort of educational spending. Compared that by jurisdiction. So there's a little bit there. I mean, structurally, I'm hard pressed. You know, as my bio said, like I work on a lot of housing issues, and what comes up so often, and is the generational inequities that are kind of snowballed as a function of Prop 13. We were talking, I mean, you have folks that work for nonprofits that are young professionals that may want to get into a home, and in their first year, and this is, you know, something that's a long commute way out, in their first year, it's quite common that they could be paying more in that first year in taxes on that house than their neighbor has paid in their entire lifetime. And the future of our tax base in this state is young people and making sure they're employed productively. And what we've done is frozen and incentivize people as they get older not to let that housing stock turn over and all kinds of weird things that really hamstrings the ability to fund at a per capita rate that other places do. It also, and I can't stress enough, like, we're in the longest economic expansion since we started collecting data. And things only go south when there's a recession, as the prison data or the police officer data shows, as the arts classes show. Like, when we, during our peak period is when we should be trying to push more systemic changes. It gets really hard the way our tax system is in the state because it's so skewed toward income tax and not property. And so during downturns, these problems only get exacerbated really quick. So I think over the long term, arts advocacy is going to have to, I think we all come from an era of politics when tax reform is a Republican talking point, but I think people that are interested in the arts, affordable housing, other kind of issues are going to have to take up that mantle in order to fund these priorities at the way they need to be for kind of our long-term success.
So that's the end of our program today. Thank you so much for joining. There's a reception in the lobby, but thank you so much, all of you, for. And I hope the conversation continues at the reception. Thank you.